Audie Murphy was one of the most decorated soldiers in American history and later became a well-known film actor. Over time, his public image came to represent courage, discipline, and success. At the same time, several other famous figures of his era also lived public lives that appeared clear and straightforward. Behind that image, however, many of these individuals managed complex personal realities that remained mostly hidden from the public. This documentary follows a timeline-based review of Audie Murphy's life and career, alongside the lesser-known personal histories of 9 well-known stars. By examining public records, career milestones, and verified accounts, the story places each life into historical context and shows how public reputation and private reality often developed in very different ways. Audie Murphy was born in June 1925 in a small rural area of Texas, during a period when much of the United States was still struggling to recover from economic hardship. His family lived on limited income, and daily life depended on shared effort. Every member of the household had a role. From a young age, Murphy learned that survival required discipline, patience, and steady work. There was little room for comfort or rest. His childhood was shaped by long days outdoors. He helped with farming tasks, hunted small animals for food, and learned how to provide for his family in basic ways. These early responsibilities developed his physical endurance and mental focus. Schooling was irregular, and formal education soon became secondary to family needs. By his early teens, Murphy had left school entirely, taking on full-time work to help support those around him. At an age when many children were still focused on learning, he was already facing adult responsibilities. The loss of his father and the illness of his mother added further pressure. These events forced him to grow up quickly. Each hardship strengthened his sense of duty, but also introduced emotional weight that he carried quietly. Neighbors often noticed his calm nature and reserved behavior. He rarely spoke about personal struggles, choosing instead to focus on work. But even then, questions lingered about how much pressure such a young person could absorb before it began to leave deeper marks. By the early 1940s, the world was moving toward war. News of conflict spread through newspapers and radio broadcasts, reaching even the smallest towns. For many young men, military service became a path toward income, purpose, and identity. Murphy saw enlistment as both opportunity and obligation. However, his small size and young age initially prevented acceptance. He was turned away multiple times, an experience that quietly tested his determination. Rather than accept rejection, Murphy adjusted his records and continued trying. Eventually, he succeeded. In 1942, at just 17 years old, he entered the U.S. Army. Training was demanding, both physically and mentally. Military discipline required rapid adaptation, and Murphy absorbed instruction with focus and restraint. Fellow trainees noticed his endurance and steady demeanor, but few could predict what awaited him overseas. As Europe became the main theater of war, Murphy was sent into intense combat zones. Each mission placed him closer to danger. Yet at the time, few back home understood the depth of what young soldiers were experiencing. Public support remained strong, but private fear and uncertainty followed many into battle. Murphy carried those silent concerns with him, shaping the foundation of a life that would soon become widely known. And as he stepped onto foreign soil, prepared to face realities far beyond anything he had known before, the quiet weight of his past followed closely behind, marking the beginning of a transformation that would change both his future and his identity forever. By late 1942, Audie Murphy was sent overseas, joining Allied forces in the European theater of World War II. He arrived as one of thousands of young soldiers facing an unfamiliar world shaped by constant danger and uncertainty. Combat training could only prepare him so much. The reality of war introduced conditions far more intense than anything he had known in rural Texas. The sounds of artillery, the constant movement, and the pressure of survival quickly became daily routine. Murphy served in several major campaigns across France, Italy, and Germany. His unit often faced heavy enemy resistance, requiring rapid decisions and personal risk. Fellow soldiers soon noticed his unusual calm under fire. While others reacted with visible fear, Murphy maintained focus, following orders with careful attention. Over time, his role expanded beyond basic assignments. Commanding officers began placing him in positions requiring leadership and responsibility, even though he remained among the youngest in his unit. One of the most defining moments of his service occurred in January 1945, during a battle in eastern France. After most of his company was either wounded or killed, Murphy held his position alone against advancing enemy forces. Despite being injured, he continued to return fire for nearly an hour, allowing surviving soldiers to reorganize. This action later earned him the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration in the United States. But at the time, Murphy did not speak openly about the experience. He treated it as another duty fulfilled. By the end of the war, Murphy had received over 30 medals and citations, making him the most decorated American soldier of World War II. His name began appearing in newspapers, radio broadcasts, and military publications. Reporters described him as a symbol of courage and national pride. Public ceremonies followed, and invitations to events increased. The quiet farm boy had become a national figure almost overnight. Yet behind the public praise, something less visible was taking shape. The mental and emotional toll of prolonged combat did not fade with medals or recognition. Murphy struggled with nightmares, anxiety, and periods of deep restlessness. At the time, these symptoms were rarely discussed. Soldiers were expected to return home, resume normal life, and remain silent about internal struggles. Few understood how deeply war could reshape the human mind. Despite this, Murphy followed the public path laid out before him. He attended interviews, participated in military promotions, and appeared in parades. His image became tightly linked to bravery and resilience. But privately, questions remained unanswered. How long could such composure last? What impact would these experiences have on his future choices? As post-war America turned its focus toward rebuilding and entertainment, new opportunities quietly emerged. Producers and talent scouts began taking interest in his story, seeing both authenticity and commercial potential. At first, these ideas seemed distant, but soon, a different kind of stage would begin calling his name. And as the battlefield faded behind him, another world prepared to open, one that would reshape his identity once again, in ways no one could fully predict. After returning from Europe in 1945, Audie Murphy found himself in a country eager to celebrate its heroes. His reputation as the most decorated American soldier made him a recognizable figure. Movie studios and talent scouts took notice. Hollywood at the time valued authenticity, and Murphy's real-life experiences offered something that few actors could match. Producers approached him with offers for small roles in war films, hoping to capture the sense of realism he could bring to the screen. Murphy's first film appearances often mirrored his military past. He played soldiers, officers, and men confronting battle situations. Directors appreciated his presence, noting that he moved with the instinct of someone who had been in real combat. Audiences responded positively. Reviews highlighted not only his skill but the credibility he brought to each role. Early success helped him gain confidence and cemented the idea that his service was now part of his public persona. As the 1940s progressed, Murphy expanded into westerns, a genre that dominated American cinema. These roles allowed him to explore characters beyond the battlefield, portraying ranchers, lawmen, and adventurers. Studio publicity emphasized his heroism while presenting him as relatable and disciplined. Articles often linked his military achievements to his on-screen presence, reinforcing the perception of steady courage and moral integrity. Yet few reports mention the personal cost of carrying both fame and memories of combat. The transition was not without challenges. Film work demanded a different kind of endurance. Long hours on set, memorizing lines, and performing stunts created physical and mental strain. Unlike the Army, there was no strict hierarchy to follow, and Murphy had to navigate the pressures of contracts, directors, and co-stars. Some colleagues noted his quiet determination but also glimpsed moments of introspection, suggesting the war's lingering influence on his behavior. Even as he adapted to Hollywood, questions about the private impact of his experiences remained. How did he reconcile the public admiration with memories of loss and fear? At the time, few considered the psychological toll behind the heroic image. That tension quietly shaped his choices in both personal and professional life, influencing the way he presented himself to the world. And as Murphy's celebrity grew, the line between his real identity and public image began to blur. The stage of Hollywood was preparing to reveal both his talent and the hidden complexities that lay beneath the medals and applause. While Audie Murphy gained recognition on screen, his private life carried ongoing challenges that were rarely visible to the public. The effects of combat lingered long after he returned from Europe. Sleep disturbances, anxiety, and periods of intense restlessness became recurring issues. At the time, these symptoms were not widely understood, and mental health treatment options for veterans were limited. Murphy often managed these difficulties quietly, while maintaining the public image of calm confidence. He balanced a demanding film schedule with family responsibilities. Between shoots, interviews, and publicity events, he attempted to maintain normal routines at home. Friends and colleagues described him as disciplined but reserved, someone who spoke little of personal struggles. Even close associates could only glimpse fragments of the stress he carried. Many aspects of his inner life remained private, shaped by experiences that few outside his immediate circle could fully grasp. Murphy also faced physical health challenges. Injuries sustained in combat, combined with the wear and tear of acting and stunt work, created ongoing pain. He sought medical attention when necessary, but often downplayed the severity. The combination of physical strain and psychological stress created a subtle, persistent tension in his life. It influenced how he approached work, relationships, and social interactions, even as public perception continued to focus solely on his achievements. Despite these pressures, Murphy attempted to maintain stability. Personal relationships and friendships provided support, though they were often affected by the quiet intensity of his experiences. The war had left a mark not just on his body, but on his ability to relax and trust fully. These challenges, however, were not part of the stories presented in newspapers or magazines. Public appearances emphasized composure, heroism, and success, while private realities remained largely hidden. Over time, Murphy began to speak more openly about his struggles, contributing to early discussions about veterans' mental health. His experiences highlighted how prolonged combat could leave lasting effects, even on individuals celebrated for bravery. At the same time, the stories of other famous figures from the era suggested that private struggles were often masked by carefully constructed public images. And as Murphy navigated the intersection of fame, health, and personal life, the contrast between what the world saw and what he experienced became increasingly clear. These private challenges would quietly shape both his career decisions and his relationships for years to come. Audie Murphy was not alone in experiencing a divide between public perception and private reality. Throughout the mid-20th century, many prominent figures in entertainment maintained carefully managed public images that differed significantly from their personal lives. Studios, agents, and media outlets played a central role in shaping these narratives, controlling which details reached the audience and which remained private. This chapter examines 9 well-known stars whose private experiences remained largely hidden during their peak years. Each managed public reputations that emphasized success, talent, or moral integrity, while masking challenges such as family struggles, health issues, or personal conflicts. In some cases, their private lives included behaviors that were unconventional for the era, yet these were rarely documented publicly. Later biographies, interviews, and archival research revealed layers of complexity that had been carefully concealed. For example, some actors faced financial instability despite appearing prosperous on screen. Others navigated personal relationships that conflicted with public expectations. A few struggled with mental or physical health challenges that were kept out of the spotlight. These patterns highlight how cultural pressures and industry standards influence the presentation of celebrity life, often prioritizing marketability over authenticity. Even legendary figures, admired for skill or heroism, carried private histories that only emerged decades later. Audie Murphy's story fits within this broader context. While his military service and acting career were widely celebrated, his personal struggles and the realities of daily life remained less visible. The same pattern appeared with other stars, showing that fame often required a delicate balance between reality and public image. Understanding these cases provides perspective on how society and media shaped perceptions of achievement, bravery, and morality during the period. By tracing these examples, it becomes clear that the construction of public persona was systematic. It extended beyond individual choice, influenced by contracts, press relations, and social norms. Each story provides insight into the mechanisms that allowed private challenges to coexist with public admiration. And as these figures navigated fame and privacy, questions arose about how such hidden histories would eventually come to light, and what impact that revelation would have on their enduring reputations. During the mid-20th century, Hollywood operated under a highly structured studio system that shaped how actors were perceived by the public. Studios exercised significant control over their talent, managing not only contracts and schedules, but also personal behavior and public appearances. Photographs, interviews, and press releases were carefully coordinated to present a consistent narrative, often emphasizing positive traits while minimizing or ignoring personal challenges. Publicists and studio executives played a central role in crafting these images. They determined which stories were published, arranged carefully staged photographs, and controlled access to actors for interviews or public events. The goal was to maintain a coherent image that appealed to audiences and reinforce the marketability of the star. Details that might complicate this narrative, family difficulties, health issues, or personal struggles, were often kept private or redirected through alternative media stories. This system extended to actors like Audie Murphy, whose fame was tied both to his military achievements and cinematic work. Studio messaging reinforced his image as disciplined, brave, and reliable. Articles linked his on-screen heroics to real-life valor, creating a seamless public persona that rarely allowed glimpses of the private individual. At the same time, the system enabled other stars to conceal aspects of their lives that might have conflicted with societal expectations, protecting careers while shaping audience perception. Contracts sometimes included clauses regarding public behavior, personal relationships, and media interactions. Even small deviations from expected conduct could result in intervention from studio representatives. This framework highlights how much of what audiences believed about celebrities was guided by intentional design rather than spontaneous reality. The separation between public image and personal experience was deliberate and systematic. Understanding these mechanisms provides context for why many personal details remained hidden for decades. It also illustrates the pressures stars faced to conform to public expectations, balancing the demands of fame with private realities that were often incompatible with the image being promoted. This structured approach to reputation management affected careers, relationships, and even long-term historical perception. And as this network of control operated behind the scenes, questions remained about how much of the true human experience of these stars could ever be fully recognized. The systems that built fame also concealed it, setting the stage for revelations that would only emerge years later. Over time, more complete accounts of Audie Murphy and his contemporaries have emerged, allowing historians, biographers, and researchers to examine their lives with greater accuracy. Archival records, family testimonies, and previously unpublished documents have provided insight into both their public achievements and private experiences. These sources show that fame rarely told the full story, and that personal struggles often coexisted with outward success. For Murphy, the combination of military heroism and Hollywood prominence created a complex legacy. Publicly, he remained a symbol of bravery and professionalism. Privately, he faced ongoing physical and psychological challenges, as well as the pressures of maintaining a consistent public image. Historical research has helped contextualize these dual realities, showing how societal expectations and media systems influenced which parts of a life were visible and which remained hidden. Similarly, the 9 other stars examined in earlier chapters illustrate patterns across the entertainment industry. They highlight how fame, cultural norms, and studio control shaped both perception and personal behavior. Many of their private histories, once revealed, challenged simplified narratives and emphasized the tension between public admiration and private reality. The documentation of these experiences demonstrates how reputation was carefully curated, sometimes at the cost of personal transparency. Modern perspectives allow a more balanced understanding of these figures. Audie Murphy's story, in particular, reflects broader patterns in mid-20th century American culture, the celebration of heroism, the management of celebrity, and the limits placed on revealing personal hardship. By examining the full timeline of his life alongside the experiences of other prominent individuals, it becomes clear that public recognition often masked more complicated truths. This historical perspective also shows how the passage of time changes the interpretation of fame. As records, biographies, and media archives continue to be analyzed, audiences gain a clearer picture of the pressures, decisions, and circumstances that shaped these lives. And as these layers are uncovered, the contrast between public image and private reality becomes more evident, leaving lingering questions about what else remained unseen during their lifetimes. Stories like this are rarely told this way. Subscribing keeps these hidden chapters alive. Even decades later, the quiet complexity of these lives reminds us that history is never fully visible and that the truth often exists in the spaces between recognition and reality.